Hi, folks. I'm Jennifer Schlueter, Dean of Graduate Studies here at the Columbus College of Art and Design, a nonprofit art and design college that has been a creative force within Central Ohio for more than 140 years. I want to welcome you to today's event. We are here because now is a pivotal time in retail, and we believe there are none better set than the creative and resourceful minds at CCAD to examine and solve the many challenges in this evolving field. As part of that work, we've launched a 9-part online lecture series, CCAD Knows Retail, featuring industry leaders who will share their insight about the retail landscape and what is on its horizon. Before we jump into today's talk and I introduce our speaker, I want to share a few housekeeping notes. We are recording today's talk so that we can share it on our website for those who weren't able to join us or for folks who want to take a second look. Today's event is in webinar format and all lines are muted and videos are off other than for our speakers. We'll have time to answer your questions at the end, so please feel free to use the Q&A function throughout the discussion to submit them. And you're also welcome to use the chat function throughout to share any reactions or comments. Okay, now I'm really excited to introduce today's speaker. Dave Cherry, principal of Cherry Advisory LLC, is a thought leader, executive strategist, speaker, and just a delightful human. He helps clients in the customer experience industry define a customer experience strategy enabled by innovation and measured and informed by analytics that drive deep relationships and connections with customers. He's a member of the International Institute of Analytics Expert Panel. He serves on 3 advisory boards: Women in Analytics, CBUS Retail, and CCAD's MPS and Retail Design Advisory Board. He's the co-producer of the Digital Solutions Gallery at The Ohio State University and also serves as co-lead for the Columbus Fashion Alliance Innovate Pillar. Dave has worked with and for leading organizations such as L Brands, Polo, Ralph Lauren, Easton Town Center, Ascena Retail Group, Journeys, DSW, Disney, Alliance Data, Nationwide Insurance, AEP, Huntington Bank, Cardinal Health, Ohio Health, and Price Waterhouse. He holds a BS in economics from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. Please join me in welcoming Dave Cherry.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. Really appreciate that introduction and excited to be here today. And just thrilled to be following in this amazing lineup of what we've seen at this speaker series. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and jump right into the presentation. So what we're going to talk about today are the 4 equations of customer experience. And as promised, there's no math required in this presentation. So we're going to try to keep it easy and informative. And what I'd like to ask everybody to do during this session, it's something I like to ask anytime that I'm speaking. I certainly hope that you'll learn something. There's some things that I'll share that I hope you can take away. Identify something that is relevant and meaningful to you in whatever situation you are in that can help your organization, and then do something. I'm hopeful that some of the ideas and insights I'll share today can inspire you to act and improve the organization and customer experience that you're striving for. And last, I'd love to have you share with myself, with the other members of the CCAD community or other colleagues, and whether or not something worked or didn't work, or you have a new learning, just share what you've had. And so those would be my 4 asks of everybody in today's session. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I want to talk about before we get into customer experience, you guys are going to see a lot of quotes throughout that are some of my favorites that I think are relevant. And as Peter Drucker said, and I think this is very relevant to start the conversation, the purpose of a business is to create and keep a customer. And so that's why we're in business. We're always there to sell products or services and fulfill a customer's needs. That's why we're in business, whether we're in retail, banking, healthcare, that's why we're there. And I'm asking if we remember this, right? So these are some of the math equations that we are not going to get into today. We're not worried about when the train left the station. Again, the math that we're going to talk about today is much simpler than these diagrams. So let's get started. I'm sure we've all seen this diagram or varying views of this before. Retail is dead. And this was, quite frankly, even before the pandemic hit. We saw store closings, we saw bankruptcies in 2019, late 2020, people just caring about getting toilet paper, empty shelves. The signs of the retail apocalypse were talked about and perhaps overly exaggerated, for the last several years. And when you take a look at the bankruptcies, and again, this is a current list as of a couple weeks ago, that's a lot of names that we are very, very familiar with in that left-hand column in terms of just 2020. And thankfully, that pace has slowed down significantly as we're almost halfway through 2021. But again, lots of organizations, some major names, some of our folks from the Columbus community are listed in here. But we see these bankruptcies, and it certainly creates fear and doubt and furthers this idea that retail is dead. But as we're seeing in the last several months, it is back. We're seeing retail come back. I even went shopping in Costco and other places this weekend. We're starting to see the mask mandates coming back. The crowds are there. We not only has retail missed customers, customers have missed retail. So if retail is in fact back, the question is, what is dead and what is not dead? Steve Dennis, who's the president of Sageberry Consulting, also the author of a book called Remarkable Retail. This is one of the quotes from Steve that I appreciate. He said, "Physical retail isn't dead, boring retail is." And that led a few years ago when he made this comment to the rise of what we all hear as experiential retail. I'm actually going to take Steve's quote, and I've modified it a couple of different times. So to me, it's not necessarily that boring retail is dead. To me, irrelevant retail is dead, disconnected, illogical, meaningless, or forgettable retail. Those are the types of retail that are dead. It's not about the physical and the digital any longer. It's about the connection. And what we're going to talk about today in terms of these customer experience equations is going to help you understand how we move away from these dead modes of retail to a really alive and capable mode of retail. So that's what we're all about. It's about the customer experience. Customers are why we're here. It's where we in retail get our energy from and why many of us choose to participate in this great industry. So Jeff Bezos, I love this quote. One of the things that gets me up in the morning is knowing that customer expectations are always rising, and that's very exciting. When I think about this, the key for us to think about from a customer experience standpoint is what gets an amazing reaction today, what drives exponential levels of satisfaction is merely adequate tomorrow. When it comes to the expectation, when it comes to knowing what's out there and what to expect, what amazed us yesterday no longer does the trick. It means that we have to be more creative. We have to be more informative, more intuitive, more memorable going forward. So this is one of my favorite quotes from Bezos. So let's talk about what an amazing customer experience is and what it is not. So we're going to start off with what it is not. I'm going to come back to Dick's Sporting Goods, which this is a picture of Dick's. This to me is a boring picture. I know we've got bright colors, we've got great displays, but there's something missing that for a long time had been missing at Dick's. And that was having fun. Sports is fun. Playing baseball, running, hitting a golf club. Those are fun activities. Historically, we really weren't ever able to have fun while we were at Dick's. It was quite boring and really nothing that differentiated them from Amazon or any online capability. A great customer experience is not plain. If I were to ask you if this is a picture of the Gap from 1985, 95, 05, 2015, or last week, I have no idea, and we couldn't tell the difference either. It's just boring and nothing really to write home about, nothing memorable. It looks the same as it's always been. A great customer satisfaction experience is not satisfactory. No one has ever been excited about getting a satisfactory rating. I can't recall the last time I shopped at Sears and walked out exciting. I might have needed a new tool or a treadmill or something. I got an umbrella. I got what I needed. It satisfied a purpose, but it really wasn't a great experience. It really wasn't memorable. Likewise, shopping at JCPenney as an example, it's a transaction. We need some clothes for back to school. We got them. We got what we needed. We executed the transaction. It wasn't necessarily a great experience. We just did the job. Something we've confused customer experience with recently are tactics or technologies. We say we have a great customer experience because we have buy online, pick up in store. Well, again, that's a tactic. Buy online, pick up in store is not an experience. It can enable an experience, but it also has to be right by the brand and what you're trying to achieve with your customers and what their motivations are. As Steve Jobs said, you have to start with the experience and then work back towards the technologies that enable that. So you don't start with buy online, pick up in store. You understand what you're trying to achieve with that and then execute further. Likewise, in the pandemic, we saw many retailers move to curbside pickup and say, we have great experience now because we have curbside pickup. Again, it's not about the tactics. It's about the emotions and the motivational drivers of customers that we're trying to fulfill. So let's now switch into some of the things that are a great customer experience. For anybody that's been to New York and has had the privilege of going in and shopping at show fields, you know that it leaves an impression. You can't help but shop in an environment like this and be moved, feel like you need to pick up the phone, take a picture, post it on social media, tell everybody you know, you've got to check out this place. It has left such an impression on me. It is immersive. When we think about Lululemon, this is one of my favorite stores in Chicago, where they have created an immersive experience where not only can you shop for yoga pants and a sports bra, you can actually take a yoga class. And you can go in the locker room, you can check your body fat percentage, you can go to the bar, you can connect with fitness experts. Everything about the experience in that store is immersive and connected and just well thought out to really make you understand that experience, connect with Lululemon in that moment, and really connect with the brand. It is personal. One of the things that make a great experience is not being generic. This is a photo from the Levi house that was down in Miami that enabled customization of denim, whether it be skirts, jackets, jeans, you name it, everything from the color, the embellishments, the patches. You can see these two women have put patches all over their jean jackets. No two are alike. And you walk out with something that is uniquely you. That is an experience that makes it personal. That makes it something I can't get anywhere else, and no one else can get the same thing that I have. It is memorable. I talked about making a social media post, but when you go, for example, to the Nike House of Innovation in New York, and you take your white Air Force and you create a shoe that is uniquely you, and they have created that experience where you can add the colors and the embellishments and the laces and the drawings. And it is such a well-run operation. You create a memory. It's not just a transaction where you walk out of there with a sneaker. You've created a lifelong memory from there. That's what great customer experience is. And lastly, it creates a connection. You know, hopefully Costco will be getting back to this soon. But one of the favorite things that we all love about Costco is we love the samples, and we love talking to the folks that are handing out the samples and really connecting with them and talking about the barbecue you're having this weekend and whether this spicy ranch spread is going to go well at this party and what we're doing. We connect with people. We feel like they're part of our family. We're invested in them and they're invested in us. That's what creates great experiences and creates customer and brand loyalty. So that is what we're after. And who better than the master of this to talk about it, but Walt Disney. And what you need, it's not just these ideas. It takes human beings and human interaction to make these dreams reality. And that's something I'm really excited about this summer as we all start getting back and we can start taking our masks off safely now as we get that human interaction that really brings all these experiences to life. So let's talk about customer experience for a second. And as Jennifer introduced me, and I appreciate how she did this, she said that I work in the customer experience industry. That's actually something that I've had a few folks look at me and say, well, Dave, what the heck is that? I know what the retail industry is. I know what financial services is. I know healthcare, I know manufacturing, et cetera. What the heck is the customer experience industry? Well, the customer experience industry, it is the industry that involves any company that has customers. These are just a few of the players that are in the customer experience industry. I would argue that CCAD is in the customer experience industry. Cherry Advisory, I'm in the customer experience industry. All of us that have customers care about what we're talking about today. It is not just retail, it is not just selling a product. So I want to share with you one of my favorite visuals. This is a visual called the Khan Success Matrix from Barbara Khan. She's a professor at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. She wrote a book called The Shopping Revolution. And I talked earlier about customer motivations. She essentially stated a couple of things. First of all, we like pleasure and we like less pain. Pretty obvious. Well, how do we increase pleasure in the retail and customer experience world? Well, we do it through experiences and service or through great high quality brands. How do we eliminate pain? We do that with value or low price, or we do that by having convenience, or the buzzword we use now is frictionless. Now, one of the things I want you to pay attention to on this diagram, when you see the arrows emanating from the center, that's an indication that expectations are always rising, as we said earlier. And the hash marks is where expectations are today. So no matter where you plot yourself, expectations are always moving out towards the perimeter, always rising. Makes it really, really exciting. So let me bring this to life for you a little bit by telling you about some of the brands that play in each of these quadrants. There's no one winning strategy. There are brands that have chosen to play in the customer service experience quadrant, some that play in the brand quality quadrant, some in value, and some in convenience. And you have the opportunity to really make your mark in any one area. And what was interesting is when Barbara wrote this book, she argued that you have to be outstanding in one and capable in the other three. I would argue that's actually changed since she's written her book. As customer expectations are rising, we are now expecting brands to be outstanding in two of these and well above average in the other two. Again, it's not about being satisfactory. It's not about being adequate. All right. And again, when I talk about there's no one winning strategy, there's no bad strategy either. As Sam Walton, who obviously built an empire focusing on the low cost value, there is one boss, and that's the customer. And if we're not satisfying their needs, they have the opportunity to fire all of us. So the question now becomes, how do we understand that customer? How do we understand which quadrant they're in? And how do we meet them? Well, Barbara's model actually changed in the last year. This is my modification of her model. We've actually added two important drivers over the past year. Earlier this week, again, we just celebrated, or noted rather, the anniversary of the George Floyd incident in Minneapolis. But social values have become an equal, in my opinion, motivation of customers, whether it be around Black Lives Matters or gender equality or LGBTQ or any other number of social issues. Sustainability is another one that's so big. We are now looking at brands and saying, how do they measure up on social values? For the past year, we've also expected brands to keep us healthy. This is one that I'm actually hopeful goes away shortly, but that's been a key driver, is what are brands doing in this experience to manage the safe COVID protocols and making sure that I can have a safe experience. So these quadrants are now changing. There's now 6 of them. Maybe we'll end up with 5, maybe something new will come in. So I'll ask this question, why is this so hard? Right? We saw a chart earlier that said Walmart plays in this quadrant and Uber plays in that quadrant. And if we can identify these quadrants or these 6 dimensions and figure out where we as a brand need to operate, let's just focus on being really good there. So why is this so difficult to maintain consistently high customer experiences? The reason is because we as customers, we do two things. We make it hard. One, we play and have different drivers in each quadrant for each brand that we have. Sometimes I'm a convenience shopper. Sometimes I'm a value shopper. Sometimes I want quality. Sometimes I want service. I want different things from different brands. So that makes it challenging. What makes it even more challenging is sometimes I want different things from the same brand depending on one thing, and that is dependent on context. So I want to start with getting into the 4 customer experience equations. We're going to talk about the first one that addresses context, and as promised, no math involved. So here's our first equation, the customer experience strategy equation. Content plus context equals connection. Our goal here is connection. That's what we're trying to get. That builds relationships that can withstand anything negative and can really be long-lasting and sustainable. As Howard Schultz said, if people believe they share values with you, they will stay loyal, they will stay connected to you. We will continue to drink Starbucks when we have many other coffee opportunities available, but we've created that connection. So let's talk about context, because I think it's really important to understand. This is the really easy picture to think about context and what it means. So if I had to offer you a nice steaming hot cup of hot chocolate or an ice cold lemonade, which would you prefer when it's 110 degrees outside? And which would you prefer when you're looking like the gentleman in the bottom right? If I gave you the hot chocolate on the hot day, doesn't matter the artisan chocolate or how well crafted those marshmallows are, it doesn't work. I've given it to you within the wrong context. And that's what we need to understand. We as customers, we move between context so fluidly that we have to understand that, and we sometimes have to adjust our content to meet that. So let's talk about some brands that are doing it well and some that are not doing it well. We'll start off locally with Victoria's Secret. So for the longest time, this was our image of Victoria's Secret. This was the fashion show. This was successful for a number of years. But very recently, this picture of these perfect models that were all, the same size, the same height, everything, this became the disconnect. This became the context fail because they were not paying attention to what the customer was actually saying. Credit Victoria's Secret because this is the new context. This is the very recent new marketing from Victoria's Secret. And we see models that would never have appeared in previous Victoria's Secret advertising. We see coverage in some of the apparel here that would never have appeared at Victoria's Secret. But they are adapting, they're starting to understand context, and I think this is going to be a winning strategy for them. They've already seen tremendous results coming out of the pandemic. I mentioned Dick's Sporting Goods, and historically, again, this was the boring Dick's. A few months ago, Dick's announced this. They're putting in rock climbing walls, batting cages, golf ranges. You can actually play sports at Dick's Sporting Goods. They're marrying up the context and how we want to engage with the brand with the content, which really hasn't changed much. But now they're offering me something that I can't get online. I can't get at Amazon. Dick's is doing well with a context win. Here are a handful of context fails. I won't go through all of these, but I always talk about at some point, organizations need to have the vice president of common sense. And this individual needs to play a role. There's no reason why any of these should have ever made it to the market. The VP of Common Sense needs to prevent these context failures from ever happening. Let's talk about a content win and a context fail with Aerie and with the adaptive clothing that they've come out with for folks with diabetes and other illnesses that need to have their monitors and their blood sugar monitors. They're creating easy adaptive underwear, arm coverings, things like this that are really addressing a niche market, but doing it in a very inclusive way. This is a great context and content win. I mentioned the Levi House. I just love that place. My only regret is I never got a chance to go down there, but you can see just a few more photos about how fun this place was. Not only could you get an artist to paint your jean jacket while you were wearing it, but you got a bar, you got music. It was just an amazing context for what the brand was trying to evoke. Another local one, Abercrombie and Fitch. I applaud them again. This is some of their recent advertising. You know, if we all remember the old Abercrombie, we would have never seen, you know, the dad bod that's in that top right. We would have never seen, you know, an open lesbian as Megan Rapinoe being a brand ambassador for them. They're now doing that. They're being much more inclusive. They're adjusting to the context that consumers are talking about. I see this as a win for Abercrombie. So when we understand context and we present the content in the right context, we get that connection. So that's our first equation. So that's what I call the customer experience equation. Let's move on now to the innovation equation. Here's the only complicated math. It's multiplication. Ideation times execution equals value. So let's go back to our early math. Anything times 0 equals 0. If we have no ideas, we get no value. If we have no execution, we get no value, right? As Steve Jobs said, and I found this after I came up with this equation, I'm glad he validated this. Ideas are worth nothing unless executed, and they are a multiplier. So the multiplication is really critical here. So let's talk about a couple people that started going down the path. Kevin Roberts said we're in the age of the idea. Idea generation creates the winners. And then John Maynard Keynes. It's not as much in developing new ideas, but escaping from old ones. Again, these guys talked about idea generation. Idea generation is critical, but the magic happens in the execution. So let me talk to you here about an ideation win and an execution fail. I'm going to bring up a bunch of statements here. And as you read these, I want to ask you, how many of you have thought about these? How many of you have, you know, borrowed a book when you're 100 miles away from the library, right? We all do that with Audible. We get audiobooks now. We pay tolls without ever stopping. We tuck our baby in with FaceTime. How many of you are attending this meeting right now in bare feet? I'm not wearing shoes. I'm presenting in bare feet. But if I were to tell you that one company had all of these ideas, most people think, well, it must have been Apple or it was Google. It was somebody in that realm. Well, the real answer is you're close, you know, in terms of the letter, but this was AT&T. AT&T had every one of these ideas first. And if I asked you when they had this, now this might surprise you, all of these ideas were in 1993, over 25 years ago, when they had a marketing campaign. You can Google it and look at the campaign called AT&T You Will. You know, have you ever done this with AT&T You Will? So they had the ideation. They did not have the execution, and it wasn't all AT&T's fault. The hardware, the networks, lots of things weren't there. So even though they had all these amazing ideas, it was an ideation win, but an execution fail at the time, and others caught up. So as Thomas Edison said, the value of the idea is in using it. And as Dell says, ideas are just the commodity. The execution of them is not. And that's where we can add lots of value, is in the execution of these ideas and bring them to life. So let's talk about a few more ideation and execution wins and fails. Back when Express first rolled out iPads into their stores, and this is a number of years ago, great idea. They had great content. They taught the people how to use them. They were teaching the associates and the customers. They had one small problem around execution. They didn't address charging. There was no strategy. So after half a day, the associates were constantly running around charging iPads. And what was a great idea, it lost it in the execution. I talked about Lululemon before. This is both a content win, an ideation win, an execution win. I mean, this execution is just flawless. The ideas were there and it came to life brilliantly. Again, I just love what these guys have done with this store. Another local brand, Hot Chicken Takeover. This was actually Cyber Monday of this past year. I was a customer. I saw this promotion. I thought, oh my gosh, 50% off. I bought my Hot Chicken Takeover. I ordered a whole bunch of it. They failed in the sense that they didn't have a governor or a meter on the demand. They sold more chicken than they had. When I went to pick up my chicken at the Easton store, there were about 300 of us waiting outside that store for chicken. Fortunately, I got mine, but many people paid and never got their chicken. So they didn't understand the execution side of this. They turned what could have been a great experience into a terrible one. Again, I talked about the House of Innovation. If you haven't been here yet, I encourage you to go, buy a shoe, watch how they walk you through that process. The execution is flawless. It is just an unbelievable experience. You will walk away unbelievably impressed. So there we have the innovation equation. Ideation times execution equals value. Finally, we get the third equation, the analytics equation. Insight, which is our data and analytics, plus intuition. That's our experience. That's our gut feel. When we use them both, we make better decisions. So as Bezos again said, we see our customers as invited guests to a party. It's our job to make every important aspect a little better. How do we do that? By constantly making better decisions. How do we do that? Let's talk about some fails and some wins. This is an insight fail. This is a product recommendation engine. A retailer I was working for last year couldn't quite decide, even after having my information and purchasings, they didn't know if I should be getting the women's cycling tights or the men's shorts. So I guess they figured, hell, we'll split the difference and give Dave the unisex sunglasses. But their algorithms that were making the recommendation engines, they weren't intelligent. They were telling me that they didn't know who I was. That was a fail around the insights. There's a very famous story that many of you may know around Target, which was an insight win, but an intuition fail. And this is the whole story about how Target was able to look at their buying patterns and predict when women were pregnant based on what they were buying 6 months in advance of them being pregnant. And of course, Target targeted and identified a teenage girl who was buying all the right products that said that she would be pregnant and started marketing towards her. It was something that was inappropriate. And again, that vice president of common sense should have said, maybe we shouldn't be marketing all these baby care products to this teenager. So insight win, but intuition fail. Another insight win here with Root Insurance locally. I love this, and others have followed suit. Nationwide's doing this now, Progressive is doing it, but we're moving away from your insurance premium is going to be based on your gender and your age and what kind of car you're driving, to we're going to actually capture the data about how you drive. Do you drive late at night? Do you have hard accelerations? Do you have hard brakes? We're going to capture all this information and give everybody a personalized premium based on how you actually drive. This is a great insight win that we're seeing. And last, I'll share with you an intuition fail. Some of you may have heard this story before. Kodak, who had a dominant position in the film industry, they originated digital pictures. They had this well before Apple and everybody else did. Their intuition said, you know what? We should not invest in this because it might hurt our film business. One of the great historical intuition fails. So again, these are the three equations around experience, innovation, and analytics. If we master all of these, we can create better customer experiences. But there is a magical fourth equation that I'm going to share with you at this time. This is arguably the most important because this is what we're trying to create. We want brand loyalty. So this is perhaps, again, the most complicated equation. And I forget if this is calculus or trigonometry or where I got this from. Apologies to all my old math teachers. But loyalty is a function. And that function is where experience is greater than our expectation. And when we consistently deliver experiences that beat expectation, we build loyalty. And then we have to do it again and again. And as I mentioned earlier, that expectation rises Those experiences need to be better and better and better. So Richard Branson with Virgin, the key is to set realistic expectations, not just meet them, but exceed them, and preferably in unexpected ways. There's a model called the Kano model of customer satisfaction that talks about when you get an unexpected satisfaction, your levels of enjoyment are exponential relative to when you expect it. So we've got to think about ways that we can make that experience far exceed what the customer is ever thinking about and what they might be wanting, so that we can constantly build on that and create that function. So again, why is this so hard? Well, I'm going to talk to you about a couple trends that are making this challenging. So in business, we're seeing everything from digitization to automation, bankruptcies, mergers and acquisitions, privacy, security, sustainability, new businesses and startups coming into play. Social justice is important. All these factors just bombarding us with changes in what our customers are expecting, changes what we as a brand can do. Then within retail, we're seeing ghost kitchens, we're seeing driverless delivery, contactless checkout, contactless ordering, same day delivery with everything. Again, rising expectations, sometimes our own delivery, sometimes third party. We're working with chatbots where we don't know if we're talking to a person or not. We're doing curbside pickup where the only interaction we have with a person is with them throwing a package into our truck. We have virtual brands that are starting up that are offering us food that we don't know where it's coming from. And so as we have all of these different trends going on in retail, boy, how do I create connection when I never see or talk to my customer, never engage with them personally? It's making it a lot harder. So let's talk about some keys to success. So the first key is I go back to the modified con success matrix. You need to understand where you as a brand fit and where you need to be outstanding. And again, I'll argue that it needs to be in at least two of these, and you have to be really good at the other ones, but also look at your customers and understand where they play. I can tell you as a consultant, I've worked with several brands where internally they're not aligned on what the key differentiating capability of their brand and product is to customers. If the executive team is not aligned, there's no way a customer is going to understand that. So know what works for you and what will stick around longer term. Ask yourself some of these questions, right? Why do we do things the way we've always done it? The second question is critical. We never really had to think about this before the pandemic. What if we couldn't do anything that we would normally do, right? Retailers never thought they'd have to shut their doors for a month. You know, what if traffic went to zero? We never thought we'd have to deal with that. Really, I won't go through the rest of these questions, but take this slide. Ask yourself these questions. Be honest and open and transparent with your answers. If you know the answers to these 10 questions, there are going to be opportunities that you need to close the gap. Figure out where those are, have the ideas to close them, use your analytics to measure the gaps and inform your decisions, and then execute strategies to close them. There are a few attributes that are going to be really critical. I've talked about a number of times how hard this is. Have the confidence that you're able to do this. Have the confidence that it's not just you, it's also the community to which you belong. That includes the CCAD community, the C-Bus retail community, inside your organization. Have the confidence, but work with and collaborate with partners to get it done. You're going to have to be flexible because things will change. We will have unexpected changes in the marketplace. We will have new and heightened customer expectations, and we have to be flexible and dynamic. And what's that going to mean? We're going to make mistakes. We are going to have opportunities to learn. We have to be resilient. When we get knocked down, we have to get back up. But when we get back up, we have to do that leveraging the knowledge that we've gained. So we don't want to repeat it. We want to learn from it, be confident, flexible, and resilient to figure out what our path forward looks like. So one last quote I'll leave you with from Maya Angelou. People will forget what you say. They will forget what you did. but they will never forget how you made them feel. And that is the essence of customer experience. If you abide and understand by these equations and you work to create them and work to create the loyalty, you will make people feel in a way that is immersive, it is personal, it is memorable, it is meaningful, it is relevant, it is connected, it is high value. And again, if we take that content, which our merchants and our designers are creating, and we present it in the right context, we get connection. We take our ideas, we multiply them by an execution capability that is not necessarily flawless, but gets to an end result that is an amazing experience for the customer. We get our value. And we do that by improving our confidence in decision making. And the only way we improve confidence is using our insights and using our intuition together. When we do that, again, we get that sort of magical fourth equation by consistently exceeding expectations with experiences. We build and develop and maintain a very strong base of brand and customer loyalty. So that is the presentation for today. I appreciate Jennifer. I want to thank you. I want to thank CCAD for allowing me to be a part of this speaker series. It's such an impressive lineup. And I want to thank everybody for spending the time with us today. And I'm happy to spend the remaining time that we have, Jennifer, answering some questions and having some interactive dialogue with the audience.
Fantastic. Oh, thank you so much for Dave. That was really insightful and inspiring. We got a couple of questions that are already coming in, and I think I want to start with this observation. It's taking us back to your refinements to the Khan success matrix. So this attendee is first thanking you for bringing up the social values and equity piece of that sort of success matrix, and suggesting that folks are looking at where they're spending their money in new ways. Can you talk a little bit more about those refinements that you've offered and the ways you're seeing them as being durable and the sort of longer term impact on the field?
Yeah, I think it's great that these things are coming up. And when we talk about social values, again, being humans, we all have different things that are very important to us. For some people, having a person of color on the board of directors and the executive team is important. And our brand's actually doing that. It was really easy about a year ago. We saw all these Instagram posts of the black screen and say, oh, we support Black Lives Matter, but it's got to be more than a social post. And are you actually doing something about it? We see the same thing with gender equity, with women at leadership positions. We see the same thing with sustainability. We see some brands, again, a local brand coming out now, Up West, who is at the core of what they're doing is sustainability. Like, we are just a sustainability company. We happen to sell stuff and we happen to be a brand. So what's going to be really important is how strongly do we feel about these convictions, right, as a customer? So if my favorite brand is not inclusive on their executive team, and my favorite brand didn't tweet out support for Black Lives Matter, and my favorite brand has a terrible record on sustainability, but gosh, I love this polo shirt. It's my most comfortable one, and I just love it. Am I going to hold to my convictions? Am I not going to buy another product from this brand because they don't meet my expectations on social value? Or am I going to say one thing and do another? There was an interesting article I was reading the other day when Sony was doing customer surveys around what color Walkmans ought to be. If everybody remembers the original Walkman, the vast majority of their survey group said it should be yellow instead of gray. And they did this in person, and they had a number of Walkmans that everybody who was there got a free Walkman for participating in the survey, and half of them were yellow and half were gray. And when they walked out, the vast majority of the ones that were taken were the gray ones. So people said they loved yellow, but when it came time to take action, they took the gray ones. So again, that's going to be the big question on social values. It's not as much up to the brands. It's up to us as consumers. Are we going to hold brands accountable? Are we going to change our behavior?
Thank you for that. All right, how about this? We're going to sort of pivot and think about the experiences that smaller companies can implement in the context of what you're offering. So the questioner is wondering if you have any suggestions, because many of the great examples you showed are applicable to like big budgets, right? And they're wondering about how that might iterate for a smaller retailer.
Yeah. So I think it's a great question. And I would suggest that a lot of these techniques have nothing to do with budget. That's sometimes a mistake we fall into, because we think we have to implement RFID technology, or we have to create a new immersive website, or we have to do augmented reality and so forth. But the reality of it is, and I'll pick on a brand that I like, again, a local brand that most of us are familiar with, is, Homage, a small brand. They have a store, at Easton. They have one in the short north. The biggest asset they have is that store associate. And when that store associate sees me walk in, how they can engage me, how they can understand, what I like, who my favorite sports team is, am I wearing a t-shirt? Am I wearing an Homage t-shirt? What am I looking for? Am I working on value? Am I looking for convenience? That's the biggest advantage that retailers, big or small, that we have over Amazon, is we get that personal interaction. Again, I talked earlier how sometimes we as humans make it difficult because we bounce around in all quadrants for the same retailer. I often use this example. Think about a professional woman on a Friday at lunch, and she needs a pair of black heels. She's going to go to DSW, and this is pre-pandemic, right? So she's in a nice business suit, and she drives over to Easton, and she gets that pair of heels. She has 45 minutes to get back to the office. She is in and out quick, knows exactly what she wants. What's she after? Convenience, okay? Same exact woman on Saturday is at Easton enjoying some cocktails and a lunch at Brio with friends, has a few glasses of wine, decides to go over to DSW, and they're looking at shoes. They want to know about the Italian leather. They want to know about the celebrity that wore it. They want to know about the sustainability. They want to be pampered and serviced. They want to get their nails done at the nail bar. They're going to spend 3 hours at DSW. Well, that same woman is now a service shopper, right? Let's assume this is happening in August and she shows back up at that same exact DSW on Sunday. It's back to school time. She has 2 kids, $100 budget. Each kid gets 3 pairs of shoes. All of a sudden, she's a value shopper. So DSW's customer database, all their insights, what do I peg this woman as? She's 3 different things on 3 successive days. So here's how DSW, Homage, or anybody with any budget, how do you tell where you are? You interact with that woman as a human being. You pay attention to the cues that she's giving off, right? She's dressed really well. It's noon. She seems like she's in a rush. She's had a few glasses of wine and she's very, collegial with her friends, having a great time. Or she's got the kids, tugging at her legs, right? You pick up on these cues. So you don't have to have big budgets to put forth these kinds of strategies and execute them well.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. All right, this questioner is taking us to the insight plus intuition equals improved decision-making equation with no math required. And they're asking us, what is a company's best defense against those kind of intuition fails? Like if they do create an ad or launch an initiative that a customer finds cringy, like what would be the best recourse?
So as I'm looking at that, and I appreciate Gabby for giving the compliment on the Vice President of Common Sense. That VP of Common Sense is a great first step, but here's the thing. The VP of Common Sense is not, I don't care who it is, he or she is not broad enough in their diversity and understanding of the multitude of experiences to understand what might be cringy. My 16-year-old daughter will tell you that I don't have a clue what's cringy to her. So if I was the VP of Common Sense for a brand, I can make sure we're gender inclusive, we're sexual orientation inclusive, and all these different things. And I might still miss the mark because I'm not a 16-year-old girl. I can't tell you how many conversations I was with and working at Ascena when we were talking with Justice, and we said, well, we know what she wants. And I'd look around the room and I'd say, we're all, in our 40s. We don't have any 12-year-old girls in the room. We have no idea what she wants. I mean, I live with two of them and I have no idea what my two want. So you have to understand that that VP of common sense, or that team of VPs of common sense, you just look at something and say, if it feels wrong, it probably is. Again, I've brought up my daughters a few times. Like, I have this conversation with them all the time when they have a cookie or a dessert that they know they shouldn't have, or they try to hide something. I'm like, it's wrong. Like, when you've got to hide something, it's wrong, and you're trying to hide it. So when something just feels wrong, it probably is. So trust the intuition. As an analytics guy for a number of years, many of us in the analytics space, the data is it. You have to be data driven. I don't adhere to data driven approaches. I want us to be data informed. And data informed opens the door for intuition, which gives you a sense of your risk posture and that common sense to play a part. So there's no magic to that, but you've got to look at it and think about who could be offended. Does this make sense? And by the way, it doesn't mean that you don't offend somebody. Sometimes it's okay to offend in a minor way, but we don't make major egregious errors. And so that's kind of how I would suggest approaching that. It's a collaborative effort because, again, any one individual, whether you're an old white guy like me or a young Black woman or whatever you are, you don't have the experiences of all these other groups, whether it's demographic, socioeconomic, et cetera. So you've got to be inclusive and ask for that input to make sure that intuition is working well.
That's beautiful. I think that's a perfect place to sort of put a period on this sentence. And I want to say thank you so much, Dave. Before we go, I want to share a couple of announcements with the folks who are in this space with us. If today's talk resonated with you and you want to learn more about how you could be one of the leaders who will shape the future of retail using insights like these, you can check out CCAD's Master of Professional Studies in Retail Design. This new first of its kind program is enrolling its first cohort right now for a January 2022 launch. It was shaped by leaders like Dave, who are part of the advisory board for the program. And if you enjoyed today's lecture and you want to share it with a friend who wasn't able to attend or watch it again later, we'll have a recording available at that MPS retail design website that I just dropped into the chat after June the 8th. Please be sure to stay connected with CCAD by following us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day and a fantastic holiday weekend. I hope the weather gods smile upon us. Thanks a lot, Dave, and thanks, everybody. See you later.
Thank you.